Illyra Voss had learned, a long time ago, not to expect kindness from her own pack. She was born an Omega in the Silverfang pack, a family of wolves who valued strength above everything else. From the time she could walk, she was measured against her cousins and packmates, and every single time, she was found lacking. She could not shift fully until she was 12, years later than the other pups. When she finally did shift, her wolf form was thin and pale, nothing like the broad, powerful wolves that filled the pack halls. The other wolves called her Broken Wolf, sometimes to her face, sometimes in whispers they did not bother to hide. Her cousin Talia was the worst of them. Talia was everything Illyra was not: strong, confident, admired by every wolf who mattered. She had been named Beta of the pack at just 19, and she wore the title like a crown. Whenever Illyra failed at something, which was often, Talia was the first to laugh, and the rest of the pack usually followed. By the time Illyra turned 23, she had stopped trying to prove herself. She worked in the kitchens, tended the gardens, and kept her head down. It was easier that way. Nobody expected anything from her, so nobody was ever disappointed. She told herself she did not mind. Most days, she almost believed it. That autumn, word spread through the territory that the Alpha Kings of the Northern Lands were holding their yearly convergence, a great gathering where every pack presented its finest wolves before the ruling kings. Alliances were formed there. Reputations were made. For a pack like Silverfang, being noticed by the Alpha Kings could change their standing for generations. The pack spent weeks preparing. Talia and the other strong wolves trained from dawn until dusk, perfecting their forms, practicing the formal bows and words they would use before the kings. Illyra was given no such attention. She was assigned to help prepare food for the feast and told, quite plainly, to stay out of sight during the ceremony. Her pack alpha, a stern wolf named Corwin, did not even look at her when he gave the order. It was as if she were furniture, useful only for the tasks nobody else wanted. Illyra did not argue. She never did. She packed her bag, traveled with the rest of the pack to the convergence grounds, and spent her first evening there exactly where she was told to be, in the kitchens, far from the grand pavilions where the important wolves gathered. The convergence grounds were unlike anything Illyra had seen before. Tents of every color stretched across a wide valley, each bearing the crest of a different pack. Fires burned at the center of the camp, and the air was thick with the scent of 100 different wolves. Somewhere among them, she knew, was King Draven Ashwood, the most powerful and most feared of all the Alpha Kings. Stories about him traveled faster than wind. It was said his wolf had never once been forced to yield, that entire packs surrendered simply at the sound of his howl. Illyra had no interest in meeting him. She doubted he would ever notice a kitchen girl, even if she stood directly in front of him. She was wrong about that, though she would not learn it until the following night. The attack came without warning. A rogue pack, wolves who followed no king and answered to no law, struck the convergence grounds after dark, hoping to steal supplies and weaken the gathered packs before the formal ceremony began. Chaos spread through the camp in moments. Wolves shifted and scattered, some fighting, some fleeing, the night filled with snarls and shouting voices. Illyra had been carrying water back from the river when the attack started. She dropped the buckets and ran, but the path back to the Silverfang camp was blocked by fire and smoke. She turned down a narrow trail between the tents, hoping to find another way around, and that was when 3 rogue wolves cut off her escape. They were large, scarred, clearly used to violence. Illyra had nothing to fight with. She had never won so much as a friendly sparring match in her life. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear nothing else, and for one terrible moment, she was certain this was how her story would end. Alone and forgotten in the dark, exactly as everyone had always expected of her. Something inside her refused to accept that. She did not remember deciding to shift. It simply happened, faster and more completely than any shift she had ever managed before. Her bones did not ache the way they usually did. Instead, she felt a strange, powerful calm settle over her, as if her body finally understood what it was meant to become. The wolf that emerged was nothing like the thin, pale creature Illyra had always been ashamed of. This wolf was tall and strong, her fur a shining silver white that seemed to catch the moonlight and hold it. Faint markings traced along her shoulders and down her back, glowing softly, almost like starlight caught beneath her skin. Her eyes burned a deep gold. The three rogue wolves hesitated, and that hesitation was all she needed. She moved with a speed and precision that startled even her, meeting each attack and turning it aside, driving the rogues back step by step until they broke and fled into the trees rather than face her further. By the time the fighting quieted and Silverfang wolves began gathering to check for injuries, a small crowd had already formed at the edge of the clearing, drawn by what they had witnessed. Whispers spread quickly. Nobody in the gathered packs, not even the oldest among them, had ever seen a wolf marked like Alira. King Draven Ashwood arrived only moments later, summoned by the commotion. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his presence commanding silence wherever he walked. His own wolf, black as midnight, was said to have never bowed to anything in its long life. He stopped the instant he saw her. For a long moment, nobody moved. Draven's sharp eyes studied the silver wolf standing calm and steady in the clearing, taking in the glowing markings, the color of her fur, the quiet strength in her stance. Something shifted in his expression, surprise giving way to something closer to reverence. Then, in front of both packs, in front of Talia and Corwin, and every wolf who had ever called her broken, King Draven Ashwood lowered his head and bowed. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound could have been. Alira shifted back slowly, unsteady on her human feet, still trying to understand what had just happened. Draven straightened and spoke, his voice carrying easily across the clearing. "Do you know what you are?" he asked her. She shook her head, too stunned to speak. "You carry the lunar bloodline," he said, "a line thought lost for generations. Your ancestors stood as equals beside the first Alpha Kings, before the wars scattered their descendants across every territory. I did not think any of that blood remained." Around them, the gathered wolves stared, many with open mouths, unable to reconcile the trembling kitchen girl they knew with the wolf who had just made an Alpha King bow. Talia's face had gone pale. Corwin looked as though the ground had shifted beneath him. In the days that followed, the truth of Alira's past slowly came to light. An elder within the Silverfang pack, long resentful of the old prophecies surrounding the lunar bloodline, had placed a binding on Alira when she was still a pup, suppressing her true strength before she ever had the chance to grow into it. It explained the late shift, the weakness that had never made sense for a wolf with such ancestry. The years of struggling against something she never knew was working against her from the very beginning. The binding had broken the moment her life was truly threatened, unable to hold against the force of who she really was. Draven requested a private audience with Alira the next morning. She expected formality, distance, the kind of cold courtesy kings were known for. Instead, she found him waiting alone by the river at the edge of the camp, his manner far gentler than the powerful figure she had seen the night before. "I owe you an apology," he said, before she could speak. "Not just for what happened last night, but for every year before it. I am an Alpha King. Part of my duty is to notice when a pack mistreats one of its own. I failed you long before I ever met you." Alira did not know how to respond to that. Nobody had ever apologized to her for anything, not once in her entire life. "You do not owe me anything," she said quietly. "You did not know." "That is not an excuse," Draven replied. "It is simply the truth. But I intend to correct it, if you will allow me." Over the following days, Draven made his intentions clear, not through demands or pressure, but through patience. He asked about her life, listened when she spoke, and made no move to rush her into anything she was not ready for. Slowly, cautiously, Alira found herself trusting him, something she had never truly done with anyone before. Word of what had happened spread far beyond the Convergence grounds. Packs across the northern territories spoke of the Silver Wolf, who had made King Draven Ashwood bow, of the lunar bloodline returned after generations thought lost. For the first time in her life, Alira was not being laughed at. She was being seen. The Silverfang pack faced consequences of its own. Word of how they had treated a lunar-blooded wolf spread quickly, and other packs made their disapproval clear. Corwin, desperate to salvage his pack's reputation, approached Alira with an apology that sounded more like a request for forgiveness he did not truly feel he needed. Talia said nothing at all, unable to meet Alira's eyes. Illyra chose not to seek revenge. She had spent years being small because others insisted she stay that way, and she refused to spend her newfound strength proving herself through cruelty. Instead, she told her old pack plainly that she forgave them, not because they deserved it, but because she no longer needed their approval to know her own worth. When the convergence ended, Illyra did not return to the Silverfang pack. Draven offered her a place among his own pack, not as a prize to be claimed, but as an equal, a queen who would rule beside him rather than beneath him. He made it clear the choice was entirely hers. She thought about it for 3 days. On the 4th morning, she found him again by the river and told him her answer. They left the convergence grounds together as the sun rose over the valley, her silver wolf walking steadily beside his black one, 2 equals beginning something neither of them had expected to find. Behind them, the wolves who had once called her broken watched in silence, finally understanding what they had never bothered to see before. The Omega they had laughed at had become the wolf an Alpha King knelt for, not because of who her ancestors had been, but because of who she had proven herself to be when it mattered most. Illyra Voss walked into her new life with her head held high, carrying not the shame of a pack that had never valued her, but the quiet strength of a wolf who had finally been allowed to become herself.